investigating fraud in abortion petition signatures have said that they felt intimidated. Are you concerned at all about that this investigation could lead to supporters of that amendment feeling intimidated by law enforcement?
Anyone who submitted a petition accurately that's a valid voter is totally within their rights to do it. They're not investigating that. What they're investigating is fraudulent petitions. They're investigating. I mean, we know that this group did submit on behalf of dead people. I don't know how you do that. I mean, I thought that was a Chicago thing, but yet they did it here, right? And so we know that. And then you also know that there are documented examples, which FDLE is looking at, where the petition and the name does not match the signature that's on file. And that's just the reality. So the question is that a valid signature or not? And it may be that the signature is totally different, and that voter will say, no, I actually did do that. Maybe they signed their name. That is absolutely possible. And if that's what you say, I think that's probably the end of it. But I do think that that they've identified examples that are not valid, and they absolutely need to be. Anyone that is trying to commit fraud in this process absolutely should be held accountable. And what I found is, if people know that there's accountability, then it really deters others from wanting to do it in the future. The fact of the matter is, the state, I mean, since we've had the election unit, it's only been a few years, there have been people prosecuted who are illegally in the country who voted. You know, we had a guy in Broward, he said, oh yeah, Broward told me I could vote. And I don't doubt that that happened. I bet you someone told him that. So then he goes and he votes, and then he admits he's not a U.S. citizen and not even in the country legally. And then you have some people that may vote in different jurisdictions. I mean, we got a lot of snowbirds, and that's great, but you don't get to vote in New York and Florida, okay? You're a voter one of the two. So if that happens, you could be held accountable. We also have prohibitions on sex offenders, and people have committed homicides from voting as convicts, and yet that has happened where people have done it. Well, guess what? They've been held accountable. So I think that that's important. Here, we know what the laws are. Let's just all abide by them, and then let's hold people accountable who didn't do it. And that's true whether it's actually voting in some of these elections have been very close for local offices. I mean, you're talking about sometimes a primary can be decided by like 50 or 100 votes. That's happened in South Florida recently. So having people that aren't eligible to vote do it. And oh, by the way, our state constitution says you have to be a U.S. citizen to vote in any Florida election. So we got to uphold that. It's interesting how in the federal, you have people are crying about just saying on the budget that you have to be a U.S. citizen to vote in any of these elections coming up in November. Why would that be something that would be controversial? Well, the reason why is because you've had some of these cities around the country, we haven't allowed it in Florida, they have registered non-citizens to vote in the elections. And I'm just thinking to myself, if you as an American showed up to like France and said you wanted to vote, I don't think they would let you. If you showed up to Japan and said you just wanted to vote, I don't think that they would let you. I think they would say, no, it's for Japanese citizens or for French citizens. And so why would we be doing this as a country where some of these municipalities are doing it? And what they'll say is, well, it's only for local elections, you know, that they control. It's not for the federal. But how are you going to police that? Once you've said they can vote, they're going to go in, they can get a ballot and then do. So I think that the Democrats are making a big mistake by fighting on citizen voting. To me, that's a no-brainer. And I also look at what's happening across this country. You look at what's happening in Ohio, where they brought in all these illegal immigrants from Haiti, and they have like tens of thousands now in this one little town in Ohio. It's just overwhelming all the services. So you've had a massive open border and deliberately bringing people in and dropping them in certain communities, which you just can't handle that type of influx. So there's a lot to answer for, I think. It'd be interesting to see how Kamala answers this in the debate tomorrow night, because I think it's just indefensible, having been the borders are, and then all of a sudden you have this massive influx, and it's not just people from Mexico. I mean, you got people from the Middle East, you got people from China, you got people from all around the globe that are going across the southern border. You know, I've talked about this before, but Florida, we've got a lot of retired special ops people who were serving in the global war on terrorism in Afghanistan, Iraq, after 9/11. And they still have contacts in places like Afghanistan. And what they said is once the Biden debacle happened 3 years ago, that these training camps for terrorists were stood back up. And what are they training? They're training to send to the southern border to come across and infiltrate the country that way. They don't even have to do what they did on 9/11 where they had to get visas, and they were expired, but they actually did. So there's a huge amount of problem with what's happening by abandoning the rule of law when it comes to secure borders and when it comes to really valuing, there's people that would crawl over hot coals barefoot to become a U.S. citizen, to do it the right way. I think it really diminishes what a lot of people have gone through to become a citizen when you're saying, like, you don't have to be a citizen to vote, that you get benefits if you come illegally, which you do in places like California and some of these other places, the federal government giving you benefit. Someone was asking me about, they had a relative that had been applying to be a visa, it's been tough and all that, and like, what are your recommendations? Like, well, we don't do immigration in Florida. It's a federal issue in terms of a visa, but the truth is, it's easier to just come through the border than to actually apply normally. Like that's just the truth. How did we get to this point in this country where this is going on? So I think there's a whole host of issues about making sure that citizenship matters, making sure that we're respecting the sanctity of what being an American citizen means, making sure we're respecting our borders, but certainly respecting how this works in the context of these elections. And we want all citizens to have their voice. We don't want people who aren't citizens to be participating in this process, because that is not the way this process was designed. I mean, just think about, you talk about like foreign interference. I mean, just think about if we just said we're not going to check to see sure you're a citizen. I mean, there's a lot of things that could happen as a result of allowing stuff like that. So we're doing it right in Florida. We're going to uphold the law. I'm confident that if there is fraudulent activity, that'll be referred and done accordingly. If people sign petitions and it looks, for whatever reason, if someone is questioning that, if you signed it, you signed it, and you have a right to sign them. But you don't have a right to submit on behalf of dead people. If you're submitting signatures that are not matching the voter file, that's cause for concern. We want to make sure that all this stuff is done on the up and up. Okay, well, we are going to be back, hopefully, to be able to announce that we've got a pathway forward on the condos. Like I said, I think that it needs to be done this calendar year. I don't think you can wait until the spring when the legislature meets for regular session. They are going to be back for organizational session and a bunch of different times between now and the end of the year. I know these deadlines are approaching. We're very sensitive to that, and we expect and hope that that the legislature agrees and will want to move accordingly. So let's continue to get the ideas brought to the table. I think we've got some good ones. I think there's probably some more out there, and let's make sure that that we give people the relief that they need. So thanks everyone for coming.